Okay, এখানে so today we are studying according to your book. This is chapter 11, but 11. Chapter 11, and the chapter is Macroeconomics. Macroeconomic Decision in Business. Normally, economics are two kinds, micro and macro. So in this segment, we actually try to focus, and this is totally conceptual. This chapter is totally conceptual, so you can expect MCQ types of question from this chapter. And here you have to complete 4th chapter, risk analysis and macroeconomics. 4 chapters are there. It's the segment. Macroeconomic decisions in business, or you can say, in this chapter we actually try to measure the different kinds of macroeconomical policy taken by the government to control over the business. But our focus should be on macroeconomical decision. We will not talk about microeconomics. Clear? Okay. So, first of all, what do you mean by macroeconomics? We need not to know the massive explanation. We just need to focus on the conceptual part. Macroeconomics. These are that part of economical policies taken by the government of a country to deal with the demand and supply. You can say the aggregate demand and supply as a whole. That means, as for example, in a country, each and every year in a country, there is a specific amount of aggregate demand for different kinds of products, right? Different kinds of product and service. So, government have to deal with the aggregate level of demand and supply. So, when the government actually making some kinds of policies to deal with the aggregate level of demand and supply, then we are talking about macroeconomics. Clear? So, here the government, we actually focus what about the different types of government policy actually taken. Here, the thing is, government need to take different kinds of macroeconomical policy. The objective behind this, the objectives are very much important. Objectives. So, objective behind this is number 1. Why government have to deal with macroeconomics? So why government need to make different kinds of policies regarding macroeconomics? The objective is first, that is full employment. First of all, full employment. It is government task, it is government responsibility to make the employment in such that who wants a job, he can have a specific job. That is full employment, or you can say the full utilization of resources. Resources here, resources means the people. So government need to make some strategies, government need to make some decision so that anyone who wants a job can have a job. That is full utilization of resources, or you can say full employment. What kinds of decision regarding macroeconomics? The number 2, another objective. Stable pricing. Each and every year, we talk about inflation, right? We normally used to say that is the price of commodity is rising. So whatever the fact is, initially, for theoretical purpose, it is government task to make or to retain the pricing of the commodity in a stable amount. That means for theoretical purpose, we can say that is pricing should be free of inflation. But in reality, you have to face with the inflation. Clear? Stability. Then, stable economic growth. Stable economic growth. Government need to make some decision, or government need to deal with this part of economics, macroeconomics as well. That means maintain a stable amount of economic growth each and every year. That means the people, national income will be, the growth of national income will be stable, and the living standard will uprise in stable or stagnant condition. Here, stable way. That is stable economic growth. Then, balance of payment, or you can say balance of trade, or like that. Balance of payment. Balance of payment means each government have to deal with export and import of the country, right? Every country have to export its goods as well as import some necessities from the other countries. So balance of payment means the difference between the export and import. So we'll discuss this later on. So this is another objective government have to deal with. Then, so these are the main four, that is full employment, stable pricing, stable economic growth, then balance of payment, and you can say that is an appropriate distribution of income and wealth. An appropriate distribution of income and wealth. So these are the policy objectives. These are the objectives for which government need to make different kinds of decisions we will discuss. So these are the macroeconomics policy objectives. Clear? Now the thing is, suppose you are the part of the government, or any government in a country. When they are taking decision regarding macroeconomics, their main objective are these, right? So, in focusing these objectives, these objectives one another is conflicting. That is, to maintain one objective, government have to sacrifice another. Or even in some cases, government have to make some balances between these two, because one objective is, in some cases, most of the cases actually, one objective is conflicting to another. See the example. Example is, see, that is full employment versus pricing. Full employment versus pricing stability. It is government objective to make the employment such that anyone who wants a job, who is searching for a job, he can have a job. That is full employment. That means utilizing the resources. Another thing, government have to make some stable pricing in the commodity demand, right? But the fact is, if the country is in full employment, that means everybody who is searching a job has a specific job. That means everybody has income. Everybody has necessary income. That means when income is there, income is normally in there, it is simple that demand will be much more higher than the usual. So if demand is higher, we are not talking about a specific commodity. We are talking about the commodity as a whole. That's why we are talking about macroeconomics. So when demand is huge, obviously the market have to face the, or the consumer have to face the inflation. That means huge amount of pricing should be there. That means inflation will be there. So pricing may not be stable in there. So in the case of full employment, government need to sacrifice pricing. Clear? So objectives are conflicting. Then another example is See, suppose as for example, dollar অবস্থা খুবই খারাপ, বোঝা যাচ্ছে কথা? Then আসো, economic growth. Versus balance of payment. See, there is a conflicting, or there you can say conflict between these two. If the government want to make economic growth or stable economic growth each and every year, stable economic growth means stable growth in income level, right? So when there is a stable amount of income level growing, it is obvious that the normal citizen will demand more, right? When you have huge amount of income in your hand, disposable income, so it is obvious that you will demand more. Even you will demand different kinds of product, even which are not associated or which are not produced in your own country. That means when demand is more, the demand of import is obviously more. So the government have to face these kinds of problem. That is, there is a problem in balancing the export and import because import become more than export. Clear? So these are the two different objectives which are conflicting. So now the question is, in this chapter, so now the question is, what will be your macroeconomical decision? What will be your macroeconomical decision so that you can make some balances between these? That is, you have to focus on the objective, right? You have to maintain the economic growth. You have to maintain the full employment. That is, you have to measure the employment problem. You have to solve the employment problem. You have to deal with the inflation. At the same time, you have to deal with the other economical factor. So your decision is such that you can make some balances between this. Now the question is how we can go for that, or whatever the decision actually government can take. Our focus is in that situation, that position. So now the thing is, balancing. Balancing is the ultimate objective of the government. Now, how government can go for this? That is macroeconomical decision. Macroeconomical decisions. These macroeconomical decisions are taken in two different parts. One, government have to make some decision. See, suppose if there is no sort of demand, for explanation actually, government have to maintain such stable situation so that demand is there. Because without demand, there will be no sort of production, right? There will be no sort of business. So if you want to flourish the business, first of all you have to make some aggregate demand. So that's why in the macroeconomical decision, government initially have to make some policy to maintain aggregate demand. To maintain, and this aggregate demand maintain should be stable. If there is a huge demand, if there is no demand, that is not a stable demand. That means government have to maintain the situation is such that so there will be stable amount of aggregate demand. Only then business can flourish and nourish. This is number one. And number two, influence the cost, or you can say price. Influence the cost or price. The fact is, if the government want to increase the price, there will be some strategy. In the case of influencing the cost or price, government have three different kinds of strategy. Government can go for choosing any of this strategy. But করে লিখি। So the thing is influencing the cost. How government can influence this? There are three different strategies that government can go for in influencing the price. One is monetary policy. Monetary policy. One is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy. Another is exchange rate. Exchange rate. So these are the three different policy. Now we'll discuss what government can take to intervene with different kinds of economic objectives. Clear? Okay. আমরা এখন একটা নিয়ে আলোচনা করব। বুঝতে পারলাম? হ্যাঁ, এগুলা কিন্তু একদম কনসেপচুয়াল পার্ট। চারটা চ্যাপ্টার আমার পড়ানো হয়নি, সেটা পড়াই ফেলতেছি, বুঝছো? কনসেপচুয়াল পার্ট জাস্ট শুনলেই হয়ে যাওয়ার কথা। সমস্যা কতক্ষণে বলতে পারবেন এর কথা। ওকে, ফার্স্ট আসো নাম্বার 1, কনসেপ্টগুলো ভালো করে বোঝার চেষ্টা করবো। দিস আর ইন্টাররিলেটেড, সাথে একটা যুক্ত। ফার্স্টে উই ডিসকাস অ্যাবাউট দ্য মনিটারি পলিসি। Monetary policy. Monetary policy taken by the government. So, first of all, you need to know what is the policy related to. Monetary policy means here the government actually try to influence or intervene with the monetary condition of the country. What do you mean by monetary condition? Monetary condition means money supply within the economy. First of all, there is supply of money within the economy, and the, we can say, cost of finance or pricing of the money. Suppose, as for example, recently in our country, our finance minister take a decision that is interest rate should be in one digit number. Again, interest beshi chilo, 2 digit chilo. Now interest is 1 digit. So it's the kind of decision taken by the government. So monetary policy means decision taken by the government to intervene or to influence the present monetary situation or monetary condition. And present monetary condition actually depend on two different things. One is current money supply, and another is pricing of the money, or you can say interest rate. Interest rate. So in the case of monetary policy, in the case of monetary policy, we see that is government actually take different kinds of decision regarding monetary policy in these two segments. Either government try to put intervene or government try to put boundaries in current monetary supply. That is, এখন যে সাপ্লাই আছে সেটাকে হয়তো রেস্ট্রিক্ট করতে চাই বা বাড়াতে চাই। That means change the current monetary supply. Or government can put different kinds of interest rate. So we discuss these kinds of things. So regarding this decision, changing current monetary supply and pricing of the pricing or you can say interest rate, the policy regarding this is called monetary supply policy. Clear? Now the thing is, first of all, you need to know why government actually put pressure to go for taking monetary policy. Monetary policy নেওয়ার জন্য পিছনে প্রেশারটা কি কাজ করে? It may be possible that is, if there is huge amount of monetary supply in the economy, it is normal that country has to face huge amount of inflation. because normal pricing of a usual commodity is very much high, because there are available amount of monetary supply. So our কাছে দিয়ে যান
কিন্তু যে খেয়াল করছো
okay. So what the situation or what the things that make government pressure to take the monetary policy? Because there are several kinds of policy. Government can go for any of them, but government actually take the monetary policy. First of all, see, if the government want to control over the current monetary supply, why government need to do this? Because maybe there is huge amount of supply in the current economy. That's why country or consumer is facing, you can say, there is inflation problem. Inflation problem is there. So inflation problem, supply of the money, expenditure. That is, if you have huge amount of money, you will expend more, right? The fact is, in this sort of situation, to deal with these kinds of problem, government has to go for monetary policy. Clear? Now, effects. What are the effects of monetary policy? So when government actually intervened or when government step forward with the monetary policy, there will be several kinds of effect on several variables, economical variables. See, number one, through the banking segment or banking sector, government can put boundaries. Through banking segment, government can put boundaries that small amount of loanable fund will not be available. Only larger amount of fund will be available for business or massive business operation. So when government actually putting these kinds of boundary, the intention behind this is squeezing the current monetary supply within the economy. So who are facing problem? There is small amount of business are facing problem for their funding, source of funding, right? So in these sort of cases, business actually take different kinds of decision regarding long-term finance, because only long-term finance is massive. Short-term finance or small amount of finance is bounded or binded by the government through different kinds of obstacle using the current banking segment. So every level of fund will be affected by monetary policy. Here, number two. Cost of finance. If government want to squeeze the availability of the currency or money in the economy and put boundaries regarding that, it is obvious that supply will be lower, but demand of the fund is obviously higher. Okay? Supply কমাচ্ছে, demand higher হয়ে যাবে, and it is normal when there is huge amount of demand rather than the supply. Normally, the cost of loanable fund will be high. If you want to borrow some amount, you have to provide more interest against that. Here, this is number one. And with this, if the normal interest is high, it is normal, that is the rate of equity or the shareholders rate of required rate of return will be obviously high. আমরা দেখে আসছি না, normally ordinary shareholder or who are the equity shareholder, they are in the most vulnerable situation because they are provided liquidity at the end of all providings. That's why if normal cases, if the cost of capital is high or if the interest is high because of the abandoned supply, normally the required rate of return of the shareholders will be appraised, and if the company cannot make available that much fund, in that case the share price will obviously go down. Cost of finance problem. So when government actually make boundaries in squeezing the supply of fund, that means supply of fund is decreased, but the demand is always high. So when demand cannot cope with the supply, it is normal that cost of borrowings will be uppriced. Normal interest rates will be high, and when the interest rate is high, it is normal sense, that is normally company who are building their capital through shares, the required rate of return of shareholders will obviously more than that. Clear? Now the fact is, if the company cannot provide that much fund available, so in that case obviously share price will go down. So who is suffering? Organizations are suffering. If share prices go down, organization may not have that much capital by issuing that much shares. Right? So these are the problem. So these are the effect of monetary policy. Okay. Now বুঝা গেছে? Then আসুন exchange rate. Growing exchange rate. Exchange rate means currency conversion, your currency with another currency. That is it. When interest is high, if for government intervention through monetary policy, if the interest is high, today is the time of open economy, right? Any country can do business with other country, right? The fact is, hello? একবার কি পরীক্ষা দিয়ে আসবা? আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, তা আসবা কবে? এখন ঠিক নেই। তা আবার তো সেই পরীক্ষা তো পিছিয়ে গেল, আবার পরীক্ষা পিছিয়ে যাবে না? দেখো যদি পারো যে একবারে ঢাকায় যাচ্ছই যখন FA1 যদি পারো বইটা নিয়ে যাও, যদি পসিবল হয় একবারে দিয়ে আসো FA1টা। ঠিক আছে, ওকে, আল্লাহ হাফেজ। Okay. Growing exchange rate. When one country's interest rate is high, that means cost of capital is high, it is normal that other countries will be motivated to invest their capital in this country. Right? So huge amount of foreign currency comes forward through foreign direct investment. Clear? Because highest interest rate. So when other currencies come forward, it is obvious that in converting that country with your currency's demand with a price, right? Because in your country, if you want to deal with any kinds of things, in that case your currency is needed. But other currency actually coming with their own capital, their currency. So when this currency comes forward because of the highest interest rate, it is obvious that the demand of your currency will be uppriced. When demand of currency is uppriced, it is obvious that exchange rate will have exchange rate of high now. And the higher exchange rate will affect in two different things. Your country's import become cheaper, whereas export as your currency's exchange rate is uppriced, it is normal that exporting from your countries, any goods you are exporting from your countries, your price will always be expensive in comparison to the previous. But your import, when you are importing goods from other country, as your currency is expensive, exchange rate high, it is obvious that your import become cheaper. Clear? So it will create problem in balance of payments also. Balance of payment as well. Clear? So these are the effects of monetary policy. Then inflation. Even inflation. Why you are pressurized? We have already discussed. That is why the government actually pressured to pressure to take the monetary policy to deal with inflation problem, to deal with exchange rate, right? To deal with demand, excessive demand. For these kinds of reason, government actually put pressure to go for monetary policy. On the other hand, this create problems for government as well. এগুলো গভর্নমেন্টের জন্য প্রবলেম ক্রিয়েট করে। ইনফ্লেশন কিভাবে হচ্ছে? Normally you have to deal with two different kinds of inflation. One is demand pull inflation, another is cost push. One is demand pull inflation, another is cost push inflation. First of all, we'll try to make ourselves clear about these two types of inflation. Inflation means, that means when you have to provide more money for a specific commodity, right? Demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation means when there is excessive demand in comparison to the supply, any kinds of things. It may be fund, it may be commodity, right? That means when there is excessive demand in comparison to the supply, that is called demand pull. Why inflation? Because the demand is high. It is obvious that to fulfill that demand you have to cost more. So in the case of monetary policy, what the government actually take the decision regarding? Government actually put boundaries to make the supply squeezed. So when there is squeezed amount or increased amount of fund supply, demand of the fund is obviously uprised in comparison to the supply. That's why cost of capital, cost of financing is uprised. We have already discussed. That is demand pull inflation. But if you are thinking about the commodities, what fund? Commodities. When there is huge amount of demand, aggregate demand for a specific commodity. So now it is the time for the business organization to take part in that, because there is huge amount of demand, so they can go for massive production and massive selling. And doing this, they can charge huge amount of price because demand is huge. So with the excessive demand, company can go for massive production and charging more. By charging more, normal sense company can make huge amount of profit. Normally, price of the commodity is huge. That is called demand pull inflation. Cost push inflation. Cost push inflation. Suppose, as for example, today, suppose nowadays there is unavailable labor forces in our country. Labor forces is abandoned, or you can say constrained. In that case, to have labor force, normally the cost of production, actually we are saying cost of production means, or you can say factors of production. In some cases, even the price of raw material is very much high now. So it will obviously make your production more costly, more expensive. So when you have to expense more in producing the same kinds of commodity, it is obvious that your profit portion will be ultimately lower, because it is not feasible to increase the price that much. So you cannot increase the price, but at the same time your cost of production is uprised because of several factors. As for example, unavailability of labor forces, abandoned raw material supply. Clear? So these are the things. When the cost of factors of production is uprised, this is called cost push inflation. Cost push inflation means when you have huge amount of factors of production or a huge amount of cost related to factors of production, you are pushed to increase the price. Clear? So this is called cost push inflation. But in the case of cost push inflation, it is normal. That is, as the company is pressurized to increase the expense, the portion of profit lowered. Here there is a option that company can increase the profit, but here company's profit portion lowered. When company's profit portion lowered, it is obvious that company can go for lowering the production. Here, when the production is lowered, supply is less, demand is high, inflation will be there. So these are the two different kinds of inflation that government have to face in the case of taking monetary policies. Clear? Now another important thing, we have discussed this demand pull and cost push according to theory, but in real terms, demand pull inflation doesn't mean that this company can make huge amount of profit. According to theory, we say that is in the case of demand pull, huge amount of demand, company can go for massive production, charging more, profit will be more, right? But the fact is, in reality, when there is huge amount of demand, right, company need to cope with the demand. That's why company need to go for massive production. If massive production is there, it is obvious that you need, as for example, you need huge amount of labor forces. So your demand of labor forces will uprise, and uprise demand will obviously increase the price of the labor forces. If you want to increase the production, you need massive amount of raw material. When you need massive amount of raw material, obviously it is normal, that is cost of raw material will uprise. So when you are focusing demand pull inflation, it doesn't mean that you can make profit. If you go for that, cost push inflation will also be demand pull inflation. Clear? So these are the problems that government have to face in the case of monetary policy. But the fact is, government have to take the monetary policy for these factors. It goes extra. এখন আসো now so we have discussed what are the factors on which monetary policy can affect, or on which monetary policy can create effect, right? So government is pressurized to take the monetary policy, affecting some specific variables, but at the same time, government has to face some problems. What are the problems? We have already discussed the problems. First of all, choice of targets, or you can say variable. We have discussed that is government have to go for taking monetary policy to intervene or to confront different kinds of macroeconomical variables. That is inflationary change, right? Then exchange rate, demand and supply. For these kinds of reasons, government need to go for monetary policy. But in doing that, first of all, government have to face this problem. There is choice of target or variables. In the monetary policy, there are only two options in front of the government can go for. Either government can squeeze the monetary supply, or can charge interest rate, right? So now the fact is, the question is, in which option government should be choose? Because there are several kinds of variables that you have to confront. Now the fact is, the burning question is, which option you have to go for? Whether you squeeze the supply or charge the interest. Suppose, why this is problem? As for example, suppose now government provide huge amount of interest rates. So when government actually imposing amount of interest to reduce the another fact is example মুছে ফেলে এটা এখানে লিখে আলোচনা করতে হবে suppose government impose interest see the problem is when there is interest, high amount of interest imposed by the government, imposed by the government. The problem is, see, the problem, first of problem is, that is normally the cost of capital will uprise. Number one. Number two, here the normal people will be motivated to save rather spend in different kinds of expenditure because interest is high, right? And therefore, when interest is high, people are saving more rather spending more, right? So when people are saving more, it is normal that cost is as with the interest rate, cost of borrowing is obviously high. So suppose you are the business people. In that case, you will not be motivated to invest more because cost of capital is high. তাহলে normal people কি করতেছে? They are saving more rather spending. If the normal people is saving more rather spending, normally demand of commodity will go down, right? Government একটা কাজ ছিল maintaining aggregate stable amount of aggregate demand. Government demand তো পড়ে গেল। এক number two, investing will be motivated. Investing in different segments will be motivated, but the fact is, when cost of capital is uprised, investment in different kinds of project or business will be demotivated. See, if you want to borrow, you have to provide more interest. So in that case, you will not be motivated to invest somewhere else, right? So business expansion will obviously do it. So these are the problem. When you are imposing interest. Another thing is, when you are charging interest, suppose the intention behind this is reducing the demand. In most of the cases, in public spending, most of the cases public spend actually their own money. In the case of public spending, suppose, as for example, whatever your daily expenses, in most of the cases you will use your own disposable income rather borrowing somewhere else. So through imposing interest, government cannot put control over the durable income or disposable cost, or you can say public spending. Interest charge করেও দেখা যাবে গভর্নমেন্ট পাবলিক স্পেন্ডিং কে ওই পরিমাণ কন্ট্রোল করতে পারবে না because they are not borrowing, they are using their own disposable income. This is one. But in several cases, suppose as for example housing, in our country, our situation is that when you have to buy a land, when you have to buy an apartment, in that case you have to depend upon the bank. If government is imposing high interest rate, in this normal scenario, that in this sort of cases the cost of borrowings will be high, so housing society will suffer. So some part of the economy will suffer, some part of the economy will not even affected. So these are the problem. Clear? This is number one. And number two problem is we have already discussed this. As the today's economy is free, when you are charging more interest, some other country will be motivated to come with their own capital, and obviously it will increase your exchange rate. So you have to suffer that. So these are the problems regarding monetary policy, and we have already discussed how the monetary policy affect different kinds of variables of macroeconomics. Clear? Okay. Next আরেকটা ক্লাস আমি নিব একটু পরে।